Hi class, in this video I'm going to talk to you about gas exchange, which is assessment statements 641 through 645. We're going to be talking about the structure of the lung, how air, primarily oxygen, gets into the lungs, how carbon dioxide is removed from the lungs, and these structures called alveoli, which are important for oxygen and carbon dioxide diffusion into the bloodstream and out of the bloodstream. Okay, so the first assessment statement says, distinguish between ventilation, gas exchange, and cell respiration. So this figure is showing you where the lungs are located, and ventilation is the process of gases going into the lung and out of the lung through the mouth. Gas exchange, if we look at this image here on the left, there's a sac which is found at the end of our lungs, which we'll talk about. These are called alveoli. And the blood comes from the heart. So remember, this is the pulmonary artery. And it passes by the alveoli, and oxygen diffuses in because the concentration is high inside the alveoli, but low inside the blood that's coming from the heart. And the carbon dioxide is high in the blood, but low in this alveoli structure. So that's why the concentration flow of carbon dioxide goes in and the oxygen goes out. And then it flows back towards the heart over here, and this is the pulmonary vein where the oxygen concentration is high. So let's look at the image here on the right, and it's a little bit more detailed, but basically showing the same thing, that the red blood cells are flowing by the alveoli, and gases are flowing out into the alveoli from the bloodstream, that's carbon dioxide, and there's gases flowing in to the bloodstream from the alveoli, and that is oxygen. So pause this and read these little notations. And the last part of the assessment statement talks about cell respiration. Remember, cell respiration is the process of taking glucose and oxygen and converting it to carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And this happens in the mitochondria. So remember, the cell respiration is happening inside your body cells. And there's a good image on page 169 in your book, which is this image, showing how the three terms here that you have to know how they're separated. Ventilation happens in the lungs. That's oxygen going in and carbon dioxide going out. Gas exchange is happening in the capillaries, the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the alveoli and the bloodstream. And then cell respiration is happening inside your body cells. Oxygen is going into cell respiration, and carbon dioxide is coming out in order to produce the energy that your body needs to perform its different functions. So, why do you need a ventilation system? So, for example, single-celled organisms don't need a ventilation system. They don't need lungs. The oxygen and carbon dioxide diffuse in and out easily. But for us, a multicellular organism, it's much more complicated. Because if you have a cell in the middle of your brain somewhere, this is a cross-section of a human head, and you have a cell somewhere in the middle of your brain, how is it going to get oxygen that is out here to perform cell respiration? Well, the body is really thick, so there's no way that oxygen is going to be able to diffuse through every single one of these cells and get to that one right there, right? So it has to have another way. So there are capillaries that come close to every single one of the cells, and those capillaries are connected to veins and arteries that go to and come from the heart. And the heart is pumping blood from the lungs, so the whole idea is that when you are breathing in oxygen to your lungs, the oxygen gets into your bloodstream and then is able to transport the blood to every part of your body through these arteries and then capillaries and veins back to the heart. And it can pick up the waste the carbon dioxide from these cells that are doing cell respiration, sending them back to the heart through the veins, and then the heart is pumping the blood to the lungs through the pulmonary artery, and then the carbon dioxide is coming back out when you exhale. Another reason that you need a ventilation system, other than the fact that your body is thick, is that you need to have high oxygen concentrations in the lung. And the only way you can do that is if you breathe out the carbon dioxide and then breathe in more air, which has 21% oxygen. So it's to maintain those high concentrations of oxygen and low concentrations of carbon dioxide so you can promote the diffusion of oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. The next assessment statement says, describe the features of alveoli that adapt them to gas exchange. So if you see this image here on the left, you can see that you have this major structure, the trachea, which leads to the bronchi, and then it branches out to the bronchi, and then the bronchioles, and then these alveoli, which look like grapes. And that's where the gas exchange occurs. Now over here on the right, you have a zoomed in image, and you can see here that you are creating more surface area when you have this spherical shape, and these capillaries are sitting right on the outside of these alveolar sacs. So the alveoli has several adaptations that promote its functions. Its spherical shape allows it to have a greater surface area, an increased surface area for diffusion. There's a single cell thickness, so it's easy for molecules to diffuse quickly into and out of the bloodstream. The inner lining of the alveoli is moist, which promotes diffusion. And the capillary beds are nearby, so the molecules that are diffusing don't have very far to go. So remember, diffusion is a random movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration. So if they have far to go, it's going to take a longer time for those molecules to get there through these random movements. It says draw and label a diagram of the ventilation system, including trachea, lungs, bronchi, bronchioles, and alveolar system. So I'll do a quick drawing here. We have a trachea, which is the main tube that carries your oxygen to and from your lungs, and they branch off into two bronchi. So that is the trachea. These are the bronchi. These branch off even more. And these are called the bronchioles. And then at the end of this, there's lobes of alveoli, which is where the diffusion occurs. And these are inside two lungs. This one is the right lung. Remember, you're talking about the owner of the lung. And this is the left lung. And so that's what I've labeled here. You can see this image here on the left, which shows you a much better drawing. But again, you have to be able to draw and label something like this if asked to do so. And in the last assessment statement, it says, explain the mechanism of ventilation of the lungs in terms of volume and pressure changes caused by the internal and external intercostal muscles, the diaphragm, and abdominal muscles. You can see from the two images on the left where the three sets of muscles are located. The abdominal muscles are located below your ribs. The diaphragm is located directly below the lungs and below your ribs. And the internal and external intercostal muscles are located around the ribs. The internal ones are located just inside the ribs, and the external ones are located just outside the ribs. And all these three are working in concert to change the volume of your lungs and to allow you to inspire and expire the gases that are necessary for body function. So one important thing to understand is that as you increase the pressure in the lungs, that the volume will decrease. And as you increase the volume in your lungs, the pressure will decrease. So it has an inverse relationship. Let's take a look here at the image on the right. And we'll take first at the inhalation blue arrow at the top. When the muscles contract, the diaphragm pushes down and these muscles expand the rib cage, and then the lungs increase in volume. When the volume increases, the pressure inside the lungs decreases, and that negative pressure has to be replaced by air coming from your mouth and trachea, and that causes you to inhale. When your muscles relax, the diaphragm pushes up and the rib cage closes because of the intercostal muscles and the abdominal muscles. The lung becomes smaller in volume, and because it's smaller in volume, the pressure increases. The gases have to go somewhere, so they go up through your trachea and out through your mouth. So please write down questions and I will be able to answer them in class. Take care.